most of the value added is in the battery technology, and not in putting panels together, then you see why BYD, besides all the supply chain in their own hand, is so strong on the market, because they know how to do it. They've been building batteries long before they build cars. And you can see how long every other OEM takes them to get a small foot into the battery.
Hello and welcome back to the Goldcasting podcast. Today we are doing something very, very interesting. We are examining the phenomenon BYD. They are a player rewriting rules. They come in a fast tempo, and some people will say it just overnight. And we have been digging a little bit. How did it happen? And what is really happening? And what might happen afterwards? So buckle up. We're going to speak about the fastest growing EV manufacturer in the world. And I think you have a little story to share on this subject, Fabian.
Oh, yes. When we're talking about BYD, we're talking about a company that was basically 10 years ago not existent as a car brand. But now it's the most selling car brand in the world. And that is also something which is not only a Chinese phenomenon. I heard a story from a family friend. He went to a dealership that used to sell only Mercedes-Benz. They added BYD, and within 1 month, they sold 100 BYDs.
Amazing.
They expected 30 per year. They sold 100 in 1 month.
Crazy.
That's absolutely crazy. And we'll come to that especially every market BYD enters, you see the bloodbath in the competition.
Yeah.
And today we will dig into that, why BYD kills the competition.
But I used to say to people that revolutions never happens overnight. There's a million of small decisions, many people involved, a lot of work, probably in the silent, probably in the dark for years and years and years before actually something happens like this. So same thing goes with BYD. Let's check the history. First of all, this is about a guy called Wang Xuanfu. Wang Xuanfu is, what is he now, 50 years old? Something? Turning 60 in a few years, yeah. When he was 29, he lent money from an uncle. I think it was $40,000. And he started a factory for rechargeable batteries. And worked, found more and more applications, and it became pretty big in lithium-ion batteries. And this is actually the platform where he actually started everything and gained a lot of money. He went to the stock market, soaring on the stock market. Everybody was happy. Then he told the world, I have taken all the money and I bought a car maker, a state-owned car maker. And the stock market responded not so positively. They lost actually 2.7 billion yuan over 1 day, just in the share price going down. And people were advising me, don't do this. This is stupid. How can you make money on cars? Anyway, so he did
and
this.
And especially from a guy who doesn't even have a driving license.
Yeah, picture that. Guess he's pretty much into self-driving cars then, but anyway. So that's pretty amazing. And he starts to make cars and try to figure out how to make a car around the battery. It was not the engine, it was the battery that he was building this around.
But I think that's something that we made so many times, that if you have an internal combustion engine, the engine is the heart of the engineering. There's where all the magic happens, where all the tolerances, where all the parts fit together. And the fuel tank, it's a commodity. Now with the EVs, it's exactly the other way around. The fuel tank or the battery, that is the engineering marvel that decides how far you can go, how powerful you are. And the electric motor, yeah, they have more power than you can use. So that's a commodity now.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, when he came out with the first cars, they were so ugly. So, I mean, there's a video clip, Elon Musk is sitting and laughing in some sofa in one of these discussion programs in the US. And believe it or not, I actually pretty aligned with Elon Musk because I've been traveling to China back and forth and over the years. And just, 5-10 years ago, the cars looked like a mixture between a Lada and a Rolls-Royce. It was so ugly, unproportional. But the last 2 years, they look slick, they look trimmed, they look designed. So something has happened, not only BYD.
Oh, you've seen that all around the industry. One car designer from a European, North American brand got picked up by the Chinese companies and they gave them free range. And the outcome is now what you see. Super cool, stylish, modern cars.
Yeah. And now that combination has led to a position, not only with one of the keys, that this is actually the most selling car brand on the globe when it comes to EVs.
Absolutely. But I think we can make the turn back to the battery because he didn't stay with lithium ion, because he developed that further and developed the lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are way less dangerous. You can drive a nail through that. It doesn't explode. It's cheaper in production. And that guy, Elon Musk, that laughed about BYD. For a brief time in their Tesla history, they bought batteries from BYD to put into the Teslas. So quick are the tables turning in that industry.
And speaking about the tables turning, if you then start to study the growth of BYD in certain markets, it's amazing how quickly they overtake one market. They go country by country. So in Thailand, for example, in 18 months, they went from almost 0 to 40% of the car market in 18 months. Almost every second car, was lost in the competition to BYD, the newcomer. That is pretty fast.
That is super crazy how fast they're growing. But when you look at the offering, what they have, the cars, they look good. The software is modern, feels fresh, and the price is affordable even for markets like Thailand. And that combination is a really good thing. And second thing is that, because we in Europe or North America, we have a very good charging network. So going fully battery electric works totally fine here. You can go long distance, charge in the city, everywhere, no problem at all. But when you are in other countries where there is, maybe in some cities they have a bit of charging and the rest have you done them at home. Most of the cars BYD sells are hybrids. So they still have an internal combustion engine to go into these rural areas where you don't have the charging infrastructure, connecting the other 500 million Chinese people that not live in the big cities.
Yeah, and that's the customers, it's not including the whole family. It's the guy or man or woman actually buying the car. Yeah, so I think now we touched base a little bit on what are the cornerstones of the success of BYD. And it's actually 3 points. And I think as a production guy, I'm deeply impressed about the first one, because what it is that BYD is doing everything. They have extremely limited dependencies to anybody else. They do even own semiconductor. They do the windscreen. They do all the subsystems. They do castings. They do everything. So what does this mean? Well, at every crisis, if there's a shortage of semiconductors or whatever, when everybody's standing still, like the war in Ukraine stopped certain car makers because all the cable assemblies came from Ukraine, BYD moves on. They don't have that problem. So you can argue that you will not be cost effective and you will lose margin and so forth. But on the other hand, you actually have the whole margin in your hand, from the raw material all the way to the car. You don't split the margin with anybody.
And by raw material, we are not talking about, okay, they're buying some materials and preparing them into something. No, they start on the mining side. BYD owns their mines on one side, and on the other side, how to get your cars to your customers. BYD owns the ships as well.
So it's totally fully integrated with no dependence. That is pretty neat if you want to have safety when the world is troublesome.
Yeah, you can depend when you decide you want to ship your cars there, or you suddenly see a change in regulations for import of cars. You take your ship, go somewhere else, because your cars, your ship, you decide what's going on.
Yeah. And when no one wanted to deliver or found it difficult to deliver to Brazil, for example, I mean, guess who stepped in? BYD took over the market, basically. So no dependencies, all right? Second point, the boring option. You were touching base on this, Fabian, and I kind of like to repeat this, that they understood that the car buyer, the users, had a user pattern that didn't allow them to charge in every street corner like in Stockholm or Oslo or I know around Germany. So hybrids, they were super big on hybrids, and it took them a couple of years to become one of the biggest producers of hybrids, meaning they had an economy of scale pretty quickly, especially on the internal market in China. And if you have the economy of scale, you start to get things to move. The third thing, and I think long-term wise, this could be so extremely important. You said, Fabian, that it was switching from engine to now the battery. The blade batteries and the battery technology, they are leading this because they have the ability not to come up with some fancy chemicals or new chemical systems for anodes and cathodes and electrolysis and all that. They actually also have the manufacturing experience. So those two in combination. So the 2020 blade battery, lithium iron phosphate, cheaper, less hazardous, and more important, they own it from start to finish via their own production.
And when you see now that for an EV, most of the value added is in the battery technology, and not in putting panels together, then you see why BYD, besides all the supply chain in their own hand, is so strong on the market, because they know how to do it. They've been building batteries long before they build cars. And you can see how long every other OEM takes them to get a small foot into the battery. Most of them still buy the raw material and just put them in pouches or in plates and call them, that's our battery. But the intelligence is somewhere completely different. And you see how long it takes to build up that skill and how quickly you can build a car when you don't have to build an ICE engine.
Yeah, really. But then it's so interesting because we said, okay, there are 3 cornerstones of the success. These are the ones that you can find a lot of info and intel on, but then you have a fourth one, and the fourth one is called reshaping and the Central Communistic Committee, right? Now it's become interesting because besides technology, besides the vision, besides always taking the right decision when it comes to the market and user data and user patterns, they have been very close, so I don't think it's wrong to say they have been selected for a higher purpose. So if you look at the grants, they have had at least 4.3 billion euros that has come for subsidiaries or grants or helping them from a governmental side. Free lands of factories, absolutely. State-owned banks are giving them big loans with 0% interest. I mean, if you have those three, funding is not that super difficult. It's much easier.
You have the financial side already locked in, but there's also a second aspect. It's not only that the state funneled a lot of money to BYD or gave a discount to the buyers of BYDs that makes the BYDs cheaper as well. At the same time, BYD got taxi contract and bus contract one after another from all the major Chinese cities, which then also ramps up their production.
Yeah. Imagine the numbers. I mean, it's not Sweden with 10 million inhabitants. I mean, 10 million is just a suburb to Shanghai.
Yeah, so I mean, imagine the number of buses.
Yeah, so, okay, you get a kickback on every car you make, so it makes it affordable for the buyer. You get your base production covered. And then also now officially since 2025, I think it was a national industry strategy where the government collected a bunch of companies they believe in, which is why I'm saying I think they are chosen. They were chosen before 2025, but now it's more official. So yeah, tech wizard, a smart guy, but it's never wrong to have your government backing you up, especially in a powerful country like China.
No, definitely not. And also what we have to discuss, and something that we lost, especially a lot in our European industry, that they're actually building cars for people to buy. So we have to ask the question, is BYD the better Volkswagen because it produces cars that people actually can buy and afford in comparison to Volkswagen themselves, who doesn't have a cheap entryway into the EV?
So is this the new Toyota? It seems to be a perfect machine. I mean, if you look backwards, as a customer, it's cheap. fulfilling your purposes. It's transported in your own boat. When you go into the factory, you see made by BYD on everything. But governmental support, everything seems to be in line for basically taking over the world. Is this so then?
We wouldn't ask the question if everything is bright and green and the gold is coming out of everywhere. There are also things that are off the public eye, but they are still relevant to that story and is a big threat to BYD as well as the Chinese auto industry as a whole.
Yes. If you look at the depth situation, recently it has actually been written in newspaper that the depth of BYD is 8 times bigger than they actually claim in their profit and loss. It's a stock market company, so you have to be official in your profit and losses. And so strange, because they have been very, very innovative when it comes to raising cash. You got the governmental grants and all that. You don't see it in the P&L, but mostly they pay the suppliers they have in 275 days. That's 9 months. So they can actually buy your parts, assemble it, build a car, ship the car, and sell the car, get the money, and then pay you. That is the whole idea.
Yeah, probably with 9 months, you can build several cars with that working capital before you hand it out to your suppliers. But that is not to be reported in the P&L sheet because it is something that will be paid and it's not illegal to not report these things. Other OEMs have also a way to delay the payment of their suppliers. But here we're talking about 60 days, 90 days, maybe in some extreme cases 120 days. But not 275 days.
Another point which could be a little bit troublesome if you're a shareholder in BYD and expecting a continuous growth is these 0-mile-old cars. It seems that BYD is trimming the numbers by reclassification of cars. So if the dealer got 200 cars, he only sells 100, then they take 100 cars in the end of that sales month and reclassify them into a daughter company as a used car. And I don't know how it works, but then they can dump them.
Yeah, it's processed a bit longer. So they have sister companies that they also control. These companies buy the cars off the lot. So it's officially the new car has sold. It never moved. But then it's sold as a used car. 0 miles added, but for the BYD, the sales numbers increased. And then you still have the same car on the lot. And depending on where you see the footage from, you see massive parking lots filled with BYDs that are unsold, that are rusting just because they don't have enough customers for these cars.
Yeah, so trimming numbers, you never get a good taste in your mouth when you start to realize someone is trimming the numbers. But then also another thing that has started to soar now is a bunch of recalls. It's wipers that freeze in the wintertime. It's software that doesn't work. It's a lot of things that is happening. So if you go into YouTube and search for BYD quality issues, you will find a bunch of videos now these days. And honestly, I think this is a little bit new to many Chinese companies because they're used to, you make a little bit of a rip-off when you sell a product. And in China, you go along because you're a little bit respected. If you're this tough guy, that squeezes out $1 billion or $2 billion out of the market and people respect you. In US, Europe, South America, many other countries, this is not well seen. So the question is how the brand, what kind of hit it will take going forward if this continues. I'm not saying it's going to continue with recalls, but maybe. We'll see.
At least with the more you hear about it, it tanks your reputation because no one wants to have an unreliable car, or when you're driving at night on the motorway at full rain and your wipers stop, you don't want to have that.
No. We have understood also that, there are other brands in China that might come from other traditions that maybe have these things under control. But then there's another thing also, that they start to have criticism for how they actually treat their labor. And these things are difficult to handle and manage.
Yeah, especially if it's happening in China, you don't hear much, you don't see much. But as they are starting to build up plants all around the world, we've seen the first effect on the Brazilian plant, where they basically have gone, according to newspapers, into slavery condition. So taking away the passports from their Chinese employees and forcing them to work 14, 16 hours per day. these long days, and that is something that even got the president of Brazil involved.
Yeah, that president too. Because now, officially and in newspaper, even Xi Jinping and his leaders have started to say that, maybe the BYD situation is troublesome. Pretty much the exact same word they used before Evergrande actually went belly up. So if something is quickly upwards, it could also turn quickly downwards.
Exactly, especially when you have a parking lot filled with cars. They may be 270 days old. As soon as they are 5 days older, you have still to pay your suppliers. Or in that case of BYD, you have to pay yourself somehow and allocate that debt to your P&L sheet. And the more you have to do that, the more problematic it becomes until it really triggers an insolvency.
Yeah. So now, if you're listening to this, you might think that, maybe this BYD nightmare will be over. Good, we can start to breathe again and make our cars here in Europe. Back to number one, right? No. Because if you look at the competition from China, I mean, they're super happy about BYD. Because one thing that has been established, it's okay to buy a Chinese car.
Absolutely. And especially, there isn't just one Chinese brand. There are more than 100 Chinese brands. They all had time to adapt to different markets. They learned how to get out the economy of scale. You already see it, for example, in stock prices from Geely, who also owns a lot of companies, a lot of brands. They're also selling well in Europe, and they are taking over that spot that might be lost in the future from BYD, but who knows how it will go. So that is something where it's just speculation. And also what we're also seeing now when we see the price differences from how cheap can all the others produce their EVs and how cheap are the Chinese EVs. They are so cheap in comparison that no one else can go with them. And that even the Chinese government said, dear automakers, please stop that price war. Go to a level that is reasonable that everybody can survive. And if a government that forced that development in their 5-year plan stops that fight on the pricing, because that is really not sustainable, then you're seeing how cutthroat the situation in China is.
Yeah. Another news that I heard is that half a year ago that they are actually reducing the grants and the subsidies on EV production also. So they're forcing the makers to export more. But some economists think it's because it's the cash drainage is something that the Chinese government has to stop, because there's been many years now with a lot of subsidies to A to Z. So, I mean, even China doesn't have limitless resources for grants and keeping industries afloat. But okay, so my speculation is that, but Chinese cars will still grow. Will it be BYD, Geely, someone else? I actually don't really care, because I'm pretty sure that we'll just see a continuous growth of these cars in sales in North America. No, not North America, they are banned there, but many other regions like Europe.
They are only banned in the US. So they're selling well in Canada, they're selling well in Mexico. They're just banned in the US. Also, as we learned from other brands, that trying to sell EVs in the US is a challenge. I think they are the last ones to adapt, but the rest of the world loves them.
Yeah. Then we come into a both philosophical and practical question. Was BYD a big experiment? I don't know. If you have read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there are a couple of mices, a colony of mices that are hyper intelligent that started the Earth to make the experiment with humans. It was quite a rather big experiment, and it's a well-written book. I really advise you, if you have a boring Sunday, read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But if you look at it, and then you know that this list of the industries where China has set the goal of dominating the global development, production, sales, whatever you want to say. Maybe this was a test run to see how should we manage it from the governmental side.
Definitely. And also what we don't know is BYD the only or one of the few companies that getting that subsidies, or did they try with several other companies we never heard about that went belly up way earlier in the development, and just BYD is the one surviving, and we're now facing the survivorship bias.
Yeah, might be.
And what we also need to discuss is that the Chinese government doesn't do these plans in secret. They're quite open about it. They call it their 5-year plans and publish that. And one of the last 5-year plans was dominate the automotive industry. I think they're on a good way to do that. And they already published the next one.
Yeah, with new exciting areas.
Absolutely. So I think we should also look into that, especially from the casting side. Probably that will be a whole podcast. Please comment if you want to see a separate podcast where we dig deep into what casting applications can be assorted with these 6 different new strategies where they want to get dominance in. I think should we go through them? So it starts with integrated circuits. So everything that makes up the microchip and electronics. And I think we already seen the effect. As when you're following the trends, if you want to get any memory or RAM for your computer, crazy expensive, a quadrupling 10 times the price that it used to be a year ago, because everything is bought up for any AI data centers. But these price hikes didn't happen in China, because Chinese manufacturing of these semiconductors is now at such a scale that they don't depend on the rest of the market. They have a constant pricing throughout that whole price increase. So we're seeing the effect. Okay, that's the first point. They're already active. That is already working. The next point.
That I love. You know why I love it? Believe it or not, I ran 2 marathons and I ran 3 other very long distance races 10 years back now. But anyway, and I don't know if you saw it on any video clip or on Facebook, a robot that won a marathon in China. Intelligent robots. That's where you go.
Definitely. That's what you're seeing. And they also had invited robot companies throughout the whole world. Technical universities from Germany came, participated. They weren't in the top 50% with their robot. Their best running robot was from Honor, a Chinese phone company, and that did the marathon in 50 minutes. That's 7 minutes shorter than the world record from a human.
Yeah. And then sometimes, you know, when you walk around here in Sweden and you start to discuss these things and people say, yeah, but okay, it could be good in a factory and so forth. And then we go home and we have a lawn moving robot and we have a robot for cleaning the house, but it cannot do more than cleaning the floor, right? But that thing, you know.
And one stroke will derail the thing.
Yeah. But all of a sudden you have actually a machine that also cleans your windows, do the dishes, put into the dishwasher, and maybe sometime folds your t-shirts out to the washing machine. I mean, come on now. The future is robots.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm dead sure.
Absolutely. And the next point is also connected to that. That is basically flying robots. So we're talking about the whole low altitude economy. And that is all about drones. And that is already in Chinese hands. There is not one brand that is big that is not Chinese. And at the moment, we're just seeing the funny drones to play around, to record some videos, the larger ones for agricultural usage. But then
you see a few in Ukraine too.
And they have a repurpose agreement there.
Yeah, but it's crazy what you can do much with drones.
Yeah, but you see the effectiveness. $500 drone killing a $50 million tank or whatnot. And you see more and more of that. These small things, drones replacing other things that are way more expensive. And I think we just touched the surface what you can do with drones.
I think so too. But they are pretty easy to understand. But then you have biomedicine. That's another area. Number 4 that they are focusing on. I think it's a survival thing, because if you have a growing population and a bad birth rate, then the population in China is actually going down. So good biomedicine that keeps people in at the workplace 3, 4, 5 more years in average actually makes sense, right?
Yeah, if you see it that way, yeah, absolutely.
But let's jump to number 5.
Yeah, that's something where we can talk more as techies, because everything we're talking about, the more we do of that, we have more EVs, if we have more drones, if we have more robots, we need more energy. And that's basically a continuous exploration. If you have a growing economy, if you have more wealth, you need more electricity. And the electricity you can produce is in a certain way limited depending on your natural resources. However, there are resources that are infinite. It can be something like wind, it can be something like solar. but where you have the large areas, where you get a lot of sun, where you get a lot of wind, that's usually the areas where people don't live. And sometimes there's no wind, sometimes there is no sun. So you need to store your energy somehow. And that's the next thing where they want to invest to get more and more efficient energy storage, because storing energy is quite a challenge. But that again, it ties perfectly into the first point, into the semiconductors. Because the cool thing is, when you want to have energy storage for sustainable energy production, like wind farms, or if you want to have for solar powers, you need a lot of energy storage that can react quickly. If you have a whole data center of GPUs training a model, and you're finished with the training, they're going from 100% load to 0% load within a millisecond. And that means gigawatts of power at the same momentum stopping. There is no grid that can handle that. But energy storage systems can dampen that, so that as soon as the GPUs go offline, you charge a battery somehow to funnel all the energy in. So you're having two use cases for the same application, and you're getting more sustainable while doing that.
Yeah. There's so much around the smart grid, so you almost get a headache when you start to read about it. But it's very interesting. And then we were down to earth again after speaking about drones. But then the number 6, aviation and aerospace. So that is another focus area. And I haven't been eating mushrooms now, but I bet that they are going the electric from the start.
Yeah, we've seen the first commercial jet entering the workforce with the Comac. Not that big of a success, even for Chinese airlines. But let's see what's coming up. And you're probably right. China is not the country where they have the huge oil reserves to fuel all the planes with kerosene. So it's highly likely they're going for the electric version.
And it was something big like a Cessna self-flying, you jump into it and then 40 minutes after you land in Shanghai. I don't know. But I can see that happen because the merger of aviation, drones and cars, if you start to look at that soup and then you throw the stone 15 years in the future, I bet when I turn 70 that we will be in self-flying planes because no infrastructure, just electricity. I mean, it makes sense. I know it sounds stupid, and I haven't been drinking, but it wouldn't surprise me, actually. Because why, as you say, why be relying on kerosene and doing all these big buses with wings that fly all over when people have a problem commuting when it comes to like 2, 3, 4 hours in a car? That's a mass market. And you had got the drones already. I don't know.
Let's see. The beautiful thing with all these plannings, we will see the results in a few years' times. And it's not something that, bam, suddenly everybody's flying around with drones. You see the development year by year by year. And especially when you're going back to a video like that, where we freeze the current view on things in time, then we will see the differences.
Yeah. Anyway, let's jump to a conclusion. We've been discussing this pretty thoroughly. I give it a try first, and please correct me, Fabian. BYD opened the door, made Chinese cars available, and made the customers outside China accept to buy a Chinese car. So Europe being number 1 in car making is gone, and it will stay gone for at least decades from now. That is what I think.
I think so as well. Chinese EV brands also made it in China that they don't buy any European cars anymore. Not even EVs. No, they don't buy the German European cars. They buy the Chinese cars. And that is something that we've seen that is transitioning all over the world. And the more the sales volume drop at the current European OEMs, the more expensive their cars get and the less of cars they are selling.
That's true.
So that's a devil's spiral.
But I think we also see a waking up, everybody that has been in China more than 50 minutes always comes and brags about how quickly everything is. But you see the recall situation, you see those YouTube videos. Fast is mandatory if you want to be successful. Embracing new technology is mandatory. Otherwise, these are cornerstones. But if you do it right and don't rush too much in the corner, so you get a lot of recalls and bad reputations, you still have a chance.
Yeah, the quality has to come along with that. And I would say, yeah, but you've seen it also with our European cars, that quality is living there. You've seen how much the purchasing departments of these OEMs are doing to save costs. And that is not well perceived. If you're paying a yearly salary on a car and everything is rattling and squeaking and everything is plastic, that's not worth to buy. You can buy a Chinese EV with the same thing for half the price. Why should you invest in that? And that is something where we really see the differentiation. However, for the large majority, spending a yearly salary on a car, these times are gone.
Absolutely, here. So, a little bit of an odd episode today. We tried to give a picture of BYD. Did it happen overnight? Oh no. Were the smart decisions made? Yes, but also there was a governmental support. There's a long-term planning somewhere. It's interesting. We also conclude that brands comes and goes, maybe in a quicker pace when it comes to EVs. As a matter of fact, I strongly believe that. But then we also see the new areas growing out from this ambition of being world dominating factor from China, 6 of them. So the only thing that remains for me is I'm pretty certain of this development. And the only thing I'm uncertain of is which year will I be in an airplane electrically driven, built in China for my travel to Skillingeryd that takes 4 hours with a car, by the way, and doing this trip in 1 hour in my electrical airplane. Will it be 15 years or sooner or later? That's keeping me curious about the future, by the way.
And what I'm taking away from the episode is that if you have a vision and fully executing it, putting everything you can have against that to really leverage everything you can get to your target, it will be an amazing future what we're seeing. And I think that is something that is predominantly happening with strong leadership that really pushes through their visions. And yes, there are things, people are against certain things, like we've seen with BYD. Everybody said, how stupid are you buying a defunct car company? No, they were just 15 years too early to take the decision. And that is something, so if you have something, you have a vision, follow through with that. If you're fully passionate, that will pay off.
Or you can say when you die that at least I tried. I didn't whine, I tried.
So I would definitely envision you to subscribe to that podcast so that we see us in the next one.
But don't wait 50 years.
No, do it right away afterwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, as always, making this podcast. And again, grateful for everybody that shouts out or that I meet on trade fairs and stuff. Really appreciate it. And have a nice evening. See you.
See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.